Growing up as a kid, yeah. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
The last division that we have to talk about in the NFC before I move on to the AFC is the NFC South. Now, the NFC South is going to be really improved this year. New Orleans won the division last year with a 13-3 record. Then you had the Buccaneers, you had the Falcons, and you had the Carolina Panthers. Well, now the New Orleans Saints finally have a threat in that division. They have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring in Tom Brady. They bring in Rob Gronkowski. They bring in Tristan Wirfs, one of the best offensive linemen from this upcoming draft class. So, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New Orleans Saints are going to be neck and neck to see who's going to end up winning this division. Now, the New Orleans Saints last year were one of the best teams in the NFC. And a lot of people had high expectations for the Saints. Well, what happened? The Saints, they go in the wild card and they lose to the Minnesota Vikings. Shockingly. And nobody really saw that coming. And they really underplayed that game. And the defense, like always, folded. Now, when you look at what's happened to the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs over the last few years, they have had some really devastating losses. Some really bad losses. But Drew Brees and his New Orleans Saints team this year, they still have a really good roster. Their defense should still be top 15. The offensive line is pretty good. You got Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Still got Drew Brees, who although is getting up there in age, I still think he's good enough to produce at a pretty elite level, or a high level at least. You got Michael Thomas, and now you add Emmanuel Sanders. Now, Emmanuel Sanders is pretty much the biggest acquisition the Saints had this offseason. They didn't really have a lot of acquisitions. They didn't really have like a lot of big known free agent signings. They didn't really have a lot of notable players that they drafted in this past year's NFL draft. But they did pick up Emmanuel Sanders, who I think is a pretty big pickup for the Saints. And the reason why, a lot of people say Emmanuel Sanders is a washed-up old veteran. Emmanuel Sanders, despite him being up there in age, was the best wide receiver for the 49ers last year when the 49ers traded for him in a trade with the Denver Broncos. And Emmanuel Sanders, the Saints aren't picking up Emmanuel Sanders to be their number one. They're picking up Emmanuel Sanders to be their number two wide receiver, which is something that the New Orleans Saints have been searching for over the last 3 seasons. Ever since they drafted Michael Thomas, they've been looking for another wide receiver to pair with Michael Thomas. Now you got that Emmanuel Sanders. You also got Jared Cook. Jared Cook was really good for the New Orleans Saints down the stretch last season. So this is an offense that has a lot of weapons for Drew Brees to still be one of the better quarterbacks, at least a top 10 quarterback still in the NFL. Now, is Drew Brees regressing? Yes. Is he losing a little bit of arm strength? Yes. Is he not able to make the throws that he once was? Yes. But he's still a productive quarterback. Now, Drew Brees isn't the only quarterback in this division that's still fighting Father Time. You got Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady left the New England Patriots and he joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that really could have made it to the playoffs last year if my guy Jameis Winston wasn't turning the football over at the crazy rate that he was. Now, a lot of people think that Tom Brady isn't going to work out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he's washed up. I don't think that's true. A lot of people said the same thing about Peyton Manning once him and the Indianapolis Colts agreed to part ways. And we saw what happened. He won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. Now, Tom Brady is walking into nearly the exact same situation. A great young defense. A good head coach in Bruce Arians. You got Byron Leftwich, who in my opinion is one of the better young and up-and-coming offensive coordinators in the NFL. And you got probably the best supporting cast to work with when it comes to wide receiver position. You got Mike Evans, top 10 wide receiver. You got Chris Godwin, a top 15 wide receiver. Then you also got Tyler Johnson, a rookie out of Minnesota, who I really like a lot. Then you also got O.J. Howard and Rock Gronkowski and Cameron Brate. You got a little bit of controversy at the halfback position. You got Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn there. But hopefully, with the improvement of the quarterback position and the offensive line getting slightly better, that back group with Tom Brady being there should be a little bit better. And the defense, really on paper, should be top 10. They had a top 10 defense last year, but it just wasn't reflected in the stats because Jameis Winston was turning the football over so much. He's putting that defense back on the field more than what they needed to be on the field. And plus, he was putting them in bad field position. So you look at Tom Brady being the more smarter quarterback who isn't as aggressive as Jameis Winston, isn't going to turn the ball over as much as Jameis Winston, is going to help out that defense a lot. The defense isn't going to have to get a stop on third down. Then 30 seconds later, they're coming back on the field because Jameis Winston turns the ball over. So, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints are going to be competing back and forth for who ends up winning this NFC South division. Now you got the Atlanta Falcons and you got the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Atlanta Falcons is a team that has continued to disappoint me the last 2 seasons. Last year, I thought the Atlanta Falcons were going to go 12-4 and end up competing for the NFC Championship. But they didn't even come close to that. Now, the first half of the season got off really rocky for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the second half, they had a little bit of a resurgence, but it was a little bit of the case of too little too late. Now, you look at the Atlanta Falcons. On offense, they're going to be great regardless of what happens, as long as Matt Ryan stays healthy. And hopefully the offensive line stays healthy. Because this offense has a lot of first-round picks, especially on that offensive line. Then you bring in Todd Gurley. And you trade for Hayden Hurst after you let Austin Hooper sign with the Browns in free agency. So the question isn't about the offense, it's about the defense. Now, ever since Dan Quinn has been the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons, he was a defensive-minded coach, supposedly. The Atlanta Falcons have never had a top 10 defense. Well, they have only had a top 10 defense once during Dan Quinn's tenure there as the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they had a lot of key injuries last year. You lost Keanu O'Neal. So, Deion Jones missed a few games. So, hopefully, if everybody stays healthy, this defense can be a top 10 defense. Now, I think the Atlanta Falcons are a dark horse in this division. I think a lot of people are really sleeping on the Atlanta Falcons this year. I think the Atlanta Falcons can go 7-9 or 11-5 or 10-6. And I think they could end up getting one of those last playoff spots in the NFC. I think this is one of the few teams in the NFC that could get 3 teams in the playoffs in. The Saints, the Bucs, and the Falcons. The last team is the Carolina Panthers. Now, I'm not expecting a lot of the Carolina Panthers. I think the Carolina Panthers, I don't think they're going to be rebuilding. I don't think they're going to be trying to lose games and tank on purpose. But I don't think they're going to be all that great. Now, the offense, I think, is going to be a lot better than what a lot of people give them credit for. Because when you look at Joe Brady and what he did with LSU, he basically has a similar quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater has a lot of mobility. Well, not a lot of mobility, but he has a pretty good amount of athleticism to keep drives alive and extend plays. His arm isn't that great, but he's really accurate and he's smart with the football. And you got a really good group of wide receivers. You got DJ Moore. You got Curtis Samuel. You pick up Robbie Anderson in free agency. You got Chris McCaffrey, who's able to do everything. He's the best all-purpose back in the NFL. So this is a Carolina Panthers offense that is going to be really good, but this defense is ultimately going to be the reason why the Carolina Panthers aren't going to win that many games. And I know a lot of Carolina Panthers fans are going to be upset with me about that, but there's no way you can lose Luke Kuechly, not only the best middle linebacker in the NFL, but one of the best middle linebackers to ever suit up and play the game of football. You're just not going to draft a rookie and have that guy automatically come in and replace him. You lost Mario Addison. You lost James Bradbury. You got rid of Justin Reed. So the Carolina Panthers lost a lot of guys this offseason on the defensive side of the football. So I don't think it's crazy to say that the Carolina Panthers defense is not going to be all that great this year. So my prediction for the team that wins the NFC South, I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know a lot of people say that I've been overrating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this offseason, but listen, you got Tom Brady pairing him up with Bruce Arians, and you got a good supporting cast and the top 10 defense on paper, in my opinion. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers team has a lot more talent than what the New Orleans Saints have. It is not by a lot. I just like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the New Orleans Saints are going to be runner-up. I think they will make to the playoffs. Then you got the Atlanta Falcons who are going to be in third place, and I think the Carolina Panthers are going to be in fourth place, and that is the NFC South.